This is later times. This is just a year later after Billy Meier passed through mission. And that is my grandfather when he was in his late 80s. And myself just a year and a half before I left to come to the United States to pursue my university studies. The background a little bit on this is how ashram look all over the place. After that contact, when I was around 14, there was no more contact. The lady didn't visit me anymore, and I just continued, the normal life that a young teenager would grow into. Finished my high school, then was sent to United States to study my undergraduate in New York. As I continued my university studies, I have forgotten all about that contact. It's always, not so much as it never stayed in a place in my mind where it is utilized. I have a life of a person who is newly arrival of United States, newly college student, a new life in front of me. I could not have spent much time dwelling on what took place in my childhood. And so I continued studying, and even when at the time as I finished my undergraduate and continued on to my graduate studies, some people would come to me and talk about UFOs and all, and I would say, I don't believe in those. I've never seen any, and so on. Eventually, almost 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, I think it was 5 years ago, Wendell, somebody handed me Gary Kinder's book called Light Years. So I looked at it and saw the picture of UFOs, and I thought, this is not my thing. I left it on the shelf and never touched it again. And I went on finishing my graduate work, went to help my country, became a diplomat, was sent back to New York to represent my country at the United Nations, worked at it for 12 years. And suddenly, one day I was cleaning and came across the book again. So I thought before I threw it away, I should look at it. I opened the page and saw the name Ashoka Ashram in one of those pages. So I was wondering, how could our place be named in this book? As I browsed through it, I saw the stories. And immediately, I thought, I bet you it was the same Swiss person that had stayed at our place when I was a child. So I thought, but how would I find out if this is the right person? I called up the publisher of that book, but nobody could. But finally, some kind person said, you should contact this person who he published another book called Message from Pleiadians, and his name is Wendell. So I through some miracles, I don't know how I found his number, contacted Wendell and told him, I think, can you tell me if this is the right person who came to stay at my grandfather's place so many years ago, if it's the same being, and so on, and I would like to get in touch with him if he's still alive. And Wendell said, yes, he's still alive, but he doesn't meet anyone, he's very private. So many people came up to me and said they knew him before. I don't think he would want to meet you because so on. So I said, well, if this is the right person, can you tell me? Ask him if he has the monkey, and these are the name of the monkeys. If he's the person that I knew, if he has the monkey, it's the same person. So Wendell wrote to him, and I think Wendell said within an hour, Billy wrote back and said, where's those 2 children? And that's how, so a few months later, I flew out to meet Billy at the center. I had only about 5 days then. But we sat and talked for 3 straight nights without sleep. It was almost like I felt I have returned home and he felt he has returned home. So it was just sharing of some part of him that he has not been able to share so much with a lot of people before. And so that is how I reconnect with Billy. Now I have talked so much, I would like to show you some of the pictures that I brought back. Slides, please. That will come back later. Yeah. That's just a story.
It'll take just a second. Number 1.
Okay, then maybe I'll go with the picture here first. If it takes long, I will go with the picture. Oh, okay. Oh, that is the... Oh. This is the background of the tip of the ashram, of the Ashoka ashram. The walls come up to that. The stone wall came up to here, and these are all trees from the. So this ship would appear at the time. Usually would be around the same time as I have the visitation, or sometime no visitation, but I would see the ship. This was taken by Billy Meier and was presented to me when we first met. Not every day, but almost I would see it once a week or sometimes twice a week. There was no timing. Could I have next, please? This is the Dog Hill, I think. This is ship over the Ashoka Ashram, but from an angle behind the Ashoka Ashram, there's a little hill, and on top of, next to that hill, we have an area where we make a shelter for animal. It's part of the animal shelter stray animals, feeding and so on, taking care of animals, and we used to call it the Dog Hill. That's our name for it. So this was shot from the Dog Hill. And Billy spent a lot of time working at the animal shelter, securing the animals and also feeding stray animals, mostly dogs and not monkeys, dogs, cows sometimes, and horses. This was taken on May 24, 1964 at 1:53 p.m. Next one. Yes, this was taken quite far away, way up high, just on the side towards the east of the ashram. Just 2 slides ball of fire, which sometime I would see more than 2. There would be a whole bunch of them. The next one, please. The same one, but taken from. This is taken from a monument in in that area. It's called the Qutub Minar. This is an old Indian historical monument. It's taken near that area. This is Billy Meier's picture. He took these photos. And this is a very rare photo. He didn't show these photos a lot because this is a part of that contact when he had with Asket. And so when I went to visit him and he showed me all these pictures because we were just reminisce of the areas and the place and from which angle and so on, because unless you have been there, you would know where and what in reference to the Ashoka ashram. The next one, please. Okay, this is a very interesting and also important to me. This is a whole bunch of them right on top of the Ashoka. This is the background of the place. You cannot see it very clearly of the reproduction here. But this is one of my ayah washing my clothes, sitting on the veranda outside of my room. This here sitting, she's washing here my school uniform. Because in the his original photos, it's much more clear. So we shared this story, and because he had interacted with her quite a bit, the washing lady. For me, it's very important because when I had my experience, it was not something, for me it was very natural. I have seen a lot of ships over the temple or over the, we have a large area over the trees, near the well, on the doghouse, all these areas that I have seen the ships. Sometimes it was very low. I could see a huge, it's almost like, one time I saw maybe half of this room size of the ship. And sometimes I see very small, further away. It was nothing strange. It was not something that caused me to run with excitement to ask some adults or my grandfather or my ayah or my governess what I see. It was a very natural phenomena for me. So when I had experiences with Asket, it was also not something very unusual or strange for me. It was almost, it's the most natural, but it's almost like a return to some known, familiar state. Could we have the next one, please? Oh, I think this... I think this is the one. Yeah, I think one of the balls descended down, and that's what produced this beautiful phenomena. The next one. Yes, this is an amazing one. This one. I wrote it. This phenomena, when it shows up like this, it's usually followed by an appearance, another disc, and it, of course, the shape is the craft shape that flows about in and out of the cloud overhead of people. Sometimes there would be a few villagers walking around, and they would look up and see this. In the ashram itself, sometimes our servant would come and said, I saw something very strange. Have you seen? I would say yes, and that was the end of it. There was nothing further to be said. Next one, please. This is right on top of the ashram in the evening. I remember this very well because sometimes there would be people looking up with me, looking up, and some of them would see the ship very clearly like myself, but some would look at them and said, I don't see it. I don't know where is it. And it's not a very small spot. It's a big spot. But some will not be able to see it. I don't know whether, living in India with villagers around might not have good eyesight. I don't know. I used to think that way. But now I think it might be some other problem. Next one. The same. Next one, please. I think this is one of the phenomena where hundreds of people saw this. This one, I think, had been witnessed by a whole, I think maybe 100 people. Even was written in the Indian newspaper in the 60s. Actually, one reporter was dispatched from the newspaper, I think the New Statesman or something. If we dig, we could find the article. He came, talked to the villagers, talked to people who work at our place, and was shown, and even talked to Billy and was shown the photos. And he wrote an article about this and interviewed a lot of eyewitnesses. Next, please. Well, that's Billy and his family. That's Billy. Of course, the boy in the red shirt is Methuselah, and and the sister, and the baby Atlantis, I think. And no, who's that? Oh, I see. Well.
Okay, that's all the slides.
Thank you. I would like to go back to the pictures and tell a little story before I sum up, because I think you have a good idea of what this. The picture of the temple. This is. It's an inner part of the temple. Yes. In this picture, it shows my grandfather sitting in front of the altar, the temple, with a lot of Indian visitors. This area I want to show you is because one evening when I finished my lessons with my tutor, I came in and I saw my grandfather sitting right there with two beings. And for some unknown reason, I don't know why I knew right away that these beings were not with us, not from here, were not the being that comes from the earth. But they do not look any different. They were two males, all in some kind of white gown, kind of a darkish complexion, very, very beautiful but very thin, talking to my grandfather. And I quietly went in and sat near to them and listened to the conversation. I did not hear anything much, but I understood, or at least what I got from that conversation between my grandfather and these two beings, were that they were very grateful to my grandfather for having taught the spiritual teachings of the Buddha, also teaching meditation. This is what I got, that they were very grateful that we are learning meditation, and we have many seekers that went to him to study certain form of meditation that he was teaching at that time. And that's how I was sitting there listening, and suddenly I turned around and they were no more. They were there 1 minute and they were not there the next minute. So afterwards, I went over to my grandfather and asked him, where were they? And they say, yes, this is how they come and this is how they will leave. And I was quite satisfied with that answer, because I have no reason to have any more doubts or to not understand what he meant. And that was the same spot that you saw him sitting with the visitors. I have put all this together to share with you, much as it is kind of excruciating for me. It is a little difficult. You might think it's not that hard to share such thing, but it is hard for me. It is because it's very, very personal, as I said again, and it's very deep. So 4 years ago, close to 5 years now, I reconnected again with Billy. After that letter, I went to visit him, and as I shared with you, that we spent 3 nights talking without sleep and sharing so much. And throughout those conversations, there are other memories that open up, and I kind of shared with Billy, and he confirmed it, and he told me that he had always thought of the 2 little children and what happened to them. He also shared that he was always told that we will also reconnect in sometime in the future. And so I still feel a closeness with him ever since we reconnect. Last year in November, I went back and spent about 2 weeks with my husband to introduce my husband to him, and we continued on as it's almost like a family to me. But this closeness I cannot describe, whether it's friends or family or what, but it is something more, maybe something less, but there is a closeness of this, the beingness of all that we are here. Thank you. Before thank you very much. And I've forgotten. I have just one more thing to share with you. I have a friend in India. She was with me when I was growing up in India. I found her when she came to visit the United States. So I brought her here to share with you briefly. I think Michael will give you.
I think it's okay for me. Okay. Well, I think it's time to wind up. And before I wind up, I would like to share a few things with you. But in reference to what my friend has shared, her experiences already, I met her when her grandfather engaged me as her tutor for her and her brother to teach the Indian language, Hindi, and we became friends right then. It's been quite long, you see, because we lost contact in between, and it's just like reconnecting again. So, like when I used to teach her, he had been a very good student, but after my teaching is over, we would just sit and chat, or we just go out, walk in the garden, and talk. And sometimes she would talk to me weird things, and she'll say, oh, you see, last night a woman came to my room. She sang to me, and she put me to sleep. Oh, okay. Or sometimes she would say, you know, I saw a spacecraft. Fine. Or she would say, oh, you know, Shashi, oh, there's a woman who also talks to another guy, and she seems to be similar. Well, that woman later I learned is Ascot, and the person she talked about is Billy Meier. And I did not have much experience seeing the spacecraft while she was there. Later, when she left for the States for further studies, I had seen the spacecrafts hovering over the temple. They were similar, round discs with a hub and light emitting light, a strong beam. They would appear as if they were going to land, but they would never make a landing, just hover around for some time. And then they just take a turn and then just go off, you know, they just disappear. But still, you know, I doubted what she had been talking to me. Until one day, while I was taking a walk with her, I saw a whole community of people from the dog hill she mentioned before. I saw a whole community of people tending to a field, busy doing their work. They didn't turn around to look at us, but I was going crazy because I thought maybe, you know, I'm having a vision or something wrong with me. I thought maybe I'll fall down. And in that very instant, when I looked again, I just saw the sight, and I saw the fields. They were geometric in pattern, but not the crop, not in circles as the crops we saw, but geometric like a star or a triangle like that. And the people who were tending to the fields were tall enough, taller than me, of course. They were wearing like long white dresses. And they were bending, the kids were there too. And that flash I always carry in my mind. But I had no one who could explain to me what I saw. But from that day, earlier I used to just brush off whatever she used to tell me as an imagination. But from that day onwards, I became serious. I understood her better, and I became a better person. Regarding Billy Meier, I have an amusing anecdote. She told me, like as she told you just now, that he had two pet monkeys whom he called Emperor Hanuman and Empress Hanuman. Hanuman, as you know, is the Indian monkey god who is venerated for power, for strength, and for protection. So I told her, I said, Phobol, see, what a good combination and what good company they make. See, an animal god and a human cat, because Billy in Hindi means cat. So I said, just see the company, how good they make. A human cat and an animal god. And we laughed. And I carried that anecdote in my mind forever. And the time period she said we were not, she was not in touch while as a student or as a diplomat. I was in India. Now she is reconnecting again with Billy Meier. I'm back with her. It's a stepping stone for me to know the unknown realms and learn more about our planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rashi and Sashi. And you see, this is what is the really impressive thing about the Billy Meier contact. It is not one man going out on his motorbike in the forest in Switzerland taking pictures. It is dozens of people who have life-changing experiences. And that's what the new investigation which we opened last year and where you get the first results is proving and will prove. The Billy Meier contact is much, much more. And maybe it can also change your life, and maybe it can change the world. Because indeed, we are not alone. What we will do now... Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. What we will do now, of course, Brian O'Leary is on the program and he gives a brilliant lecture and we don't want to miss it. But we will spend the next 20 minutes with questions. And Bob wants to tell you something?
I want to make sure we get this right, Michael. Thank you. We are late. Brian O'Leary is going to speak tonight. It is now about 7:35. At this time, the lines at none of the restaurants should be existent. You should be able to go just about right in. We're going to start Brian O'Leary at 8:45. That's approximately an hour and 10 minutes from now. Those of you that want to stay for questions and answers may do so. We will continue the question and answer session for about another 20 minutes. You do have to queue up at the questions mic over here for questions of the panel. I want to thank all of you, and hold it down. Shh. You'll be quiet when you exit. That'll be great. And those of you that want to do questions will be at the mic. Brian O'Leary, 8:45.
Thank you. And I think I have the pleasure to moderate the questions because there's no place for me at the panel anymore. So we wait 5 minutes until those who are totally hungry leave the room and those who are hungry for more information line up here at the microphone.
Would you please sign this by your name?
You can do it, no problem. Methuselah runs to the restroom. Maybe we can show. It was shown, indeed, on Japanese television, on Nippon TV, and it was, I think, some of the programs were used for the English films released by Genesis 3. Did they get a good ship shot? No, they didn't film the ships by themselves. Junichi Yaoi is one of the most amazing journalists dedicated to the UFO phenomenon. He's the Jaime Maussan of Japan, and he did a very careful investigation. They verified the authenticity of the footage and the pictures, but they did not film anything by themselves. This is something I can answer shortly. You are the next.
Did the Pleiadians know that Billy was going to lose his arm? And if they did, why didn't they stop him?
Okay, I will tell you this because I asked Billy the same question and Methuselah is on the restroom. I asked Billy the question and he said, look, it was very important for me to make this experience. And, you know, I asked Billy if you could change your life, what would you change? And would you at least try to get your arm back? And he said, no, this was an experience. I had to make it. I wanted to make it. It was just an experience. And every experience you make in life has a meaning. And it had a deep meaning for me.
Especially in India
and
with the guru.
They asked me if they should replace the arm, and I said, no, I don't want it because it's a part of my life. And I don't want to be different from any other doctor. I only things I can achieve by myself, but I don't want to take profit, advantage from my contact with you.
So they don't help him with his health either, and he still suffers without them.
They would, but he doesn't want. He doesn't want to be privileged in any way.
Thank you.
And I was in India, actually working with Tapar Group.
Okay.
Yes.
I would like to know if when was the last time that Billy Meier saw something in Switzerland?
We had the last contact on the 2nd of February 1998. 1999, sorry.
And what happened? What happened?
He had a contact. Quetzal, was it Quetzal or Pata who came on the 2nd of February? Pata. You know about the context? Come on, you know. Okay. Pata beamed himself into Billy's office. That's what Billy told me. And then they had a conversation.
But no ship then, just the person itself. And how about in India? Is still something going on in the ashram there?
The ashram now is a Tibetan ashram. Her grandfather donated it to the Tibetans when we moved over to California. And it's a Tibetan ashram and there are no more sightings.
And Billy is in good health now, or?
Billy is in quite good health and quite good shape.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I didn't talk to him in the last couple of days. I spoke to him the last time, what was it, 2 weeks ago or whatever. And
this is a question from Methuselah. Methuselah, when is the last time you lived with Billy in Switzerland? Or do you live there now?
go use the microphone there.
Now it's
means a lot to me because I'm also an experiencer.
Now it's 7 years ago at the 5th May, I think. It was the 5th May, 1992. I left from my father's house. And now I live only 10 minutes from my father's house.
I have heard that when people visit, they're often not received well, that people there are not friendly. Is that true?
That's true.
Why is that?
I don't know. For me, it's unverständlich.
It's not understandable.
Understandable, yeah.
You can speak German.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
You know, the thing is, many visitors come totally unannounced. They just snow into the life. And, you know, if you have a daily life and if you work and if you have the plans what you make in a day, it is sometimes very hard when it gets interrupted by something you didn't prepare. So I know from my own life, and I have nothing to do with the life in Switzerland, if somebody rings at my door and I'm just in the middle of a work, I don't like it too. You're welcome.
This is for anybody that can answer it. What is the difference between a ship that is a bright light and one that isn't?
Warum sind einige Schiffe helle Lichter und andere sind metallisch? Wendell?
One of them for you. I'll get that for you.
Can somebody turn the microphone?
Silver ships in reality, because the silver ships cannot come up to a globe and become a fireball. William Wilkes took a picture of one that is a silvery metallic ship in a huge ball of fire, and we had to densify the picture a great deal even to bring out the profile of the ship. But the same ship in a ball of fire can dim down to a metallic ship again and move about as a metallic vehicle.
But does that mean that they're in a different dimension?
No. I don't understand the difference in dimensions. They're changing the energy that they're using. It's a changing energy form.
Why does Billy have such hostile feelings towards Americans?
Because he made a lot of very negative experiences. And he doesn't have hostile feelings for any human being. That's not the case. You know, he doesn't really hostile feelings. He only made a lot of very negative experiences. But this is not a generalization. For example, he loves Wendell. Everybody does. I mean, who doesn't love Wendell? But he made, unfortunately, a lot of negative experiences with false promises and a very incorrect treatment of him. But Methuselah, you want to go into detail? Sure. It is not, as I said, it is not against everybody.
Es ist nur effektiv gegen diese Personen gerichtet, die meinen Vater ausgenutzt haben und die das Material missbraucht haben, um damit Ruhm oder Reichtum oder irgendwas zu erreichen.
It is just against the very special people who exploited my father and his material for their own purposes, for their own wealth and fame. And also falsified it, like, for example, a person called Adrienne. The real name is Money something, Money Escardon in Miami. For example, this is a fake, the so-called Miami contact case, and Randy Winters now knows it is a fake. He found it out by himself. When the so-called witness superimposed or projected the Billy Meier UFOs into a landscape in Florida and things like this. Or, for example, there's another alleged contact case, Fred Bell. Don't mix it up with Art Bell. Fred Bell in California, where Billy says that it's rubbish. Fred Bell claims he had sex with Sanyaza. And this is, of course, big wishful thinking. Okay, next one.
Actually, I have so many questions, so maybe I should just... The first question is that my understanding is that Billy has had contact experiences from a very early age. So the question is, was this contact process in Billy Meier's life arranged before he was born?
Yeah, billions of years ago.
Billions of years? I mean...
it is a part of many, many reincarnations, many missions he had in different incarnations. Fragt, but you can go into details. Fragte, ob der Kontakt von deinem Vater etwas zu tun hat mit der Zeit, bevor geboren wurde und seiner frühesten Kindheit. Und ich habe gesagt, ja, das geht zurück Milliarden von Jahren. What is true?
Die komplette Reinkarnationszeit durchlebt seine Geistform das zweite Mal. Also seine Geistform war schon einmal in die Schöpfung zurückgekehrt.
His spiritual form returned in a certain mission, and that's what he is doing right now. So the reason why he had the contact from the very early childhood, from the conscious age on, when he was 5, is that what he is doing right now is just a part of something he did for many, many, many thousands of incarnations.
He acted as a liaison
Yeah.
for a contact process?
To teach.
So this was Billy's role?
Yeah.
Okay. Related to the beings, the names of the beings, Samyaza in the Book of Enoch is a fallen angel. Is there any relationship between that name and the other, and the name of Samyaza?
I tell you for translation. Samyaza im Buch Henoch ist ein gefallener Engel, ist da eine Verbindung. Look, I mean, if one Samyaza was fallen, and this was a male Samyaza.
Right, exactly.
And Samyaza is the female form, so it's not the same person. For example, if one Robert is a criminal, it doesn't mean that every Robert is a criminal.
Yeah.
So it's a different person.
Okay, but the similarity of the name would indicate a common origin.
Sure.
Okay. Does that mean that...
Pleiadians are here for
right.
many thousand years.
So is that by implication that the Pleiadians were the beings in the Book of Enoch?
The Book of Enoch is describing events which were related to the Pleiadians. Yes.
Pleiadians. Oh, very good answer. That's what I wanted.
One time when I was asking about the same thing you did about the name with Billy, he told me that the answer he got was that their names are we can neither write them nor pronounce them, a Pleiadian name, because it does not exist in that kind of form. And then he said, what can I call you? And she said, you may call me Semyasi. Now, she gave him similar names for other personalities who also have different names in their Pleiadian language. She gave him that name because it would be familiar to him from the past. So there's some connection to what you're talking about.
So you're saying that it was a useful name that he
It was a useful name that he could write and pronounce.
I see.
That is not her name.
I see. Okay, good. So,
Nor is Quetzal the name of the other one. It's the same thing. Or Ta. Those are useful names for Billy, and they only pertain to Billy's relationship. When somebody else says they're in contact with Semyasi, it's rubbish. It's false because it does not have the same connotation to them.
but using those names makes the association in the minds that hear them of these historical figures. That's
Yes.
the problem.
It does to some people. For him, it was only a name for reference that he could write and pronounce.
I see,
And the
okay.
same with the others.
So that's a distinct answer from what he just gave.
It's a little different, but that's what I got from Billy.
I see, okay.
His question may have been answered a little differently.
Okay. The last question is just in terms of your ongoing investigation. Part of what we're having to deal with in the States is the book of Karl Korff, and so it would be useful to have a systematic refutation of that. Are you guys building that and going to present that as a public paper?
This is something we plan to do. And for the documentation, that means the film which will have all the results of the investigation, I plan to interview both Karl Korff and Calliope Meier, and to go into details and to expose Karl Korff as the charlatan he obviously is.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
7 years ago, Billy Meier changed my life, and I love Billy Meier. And my question is, I would love to buy the book Om or any book, even if it is not translated in English. I'll learn German to read it.
Wow.
I plan on doing that. Could you please tell me where I can get the book?
Methusalem, wo kannst du die Bücher bekommen von deinem Vater? Sie würde sogar Deutsch lernen, um das umzulesen.
Sie kann mir die Adresse geben und dann werde ich schauen, dass sie ihr zugeschickt werden.
And give Methusalem your address and he makes sure you get the book. Professor Jim Deardorff, our former Professor Emeritus of the Oregon State University and one of the most important American investigators of the Billy Meier case, especially of the Talmud Emmanuel writing.
I just wanted to ask a quick point of clarification to Phobol or Sasha, or maybe you. What is Sasha's precise? Was she the English tutor that you showed in that one photograph, or is she a different tutor?
She's my tutor of Indian language, Hindi.
The Hindi tutor?
She's not on the picture.
I see. So that's how she could learn her Hindi
Yes.
language.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Read and write.
Thank you.
Okay, the question I'm going to ask, I would like both the opinion of Wendell Stevens and Mr. Hessam, and my question is this. Bob Lazar says that the sport model that he saw at S4 is very similar to the Variation 2 craft in the Billy Meier case. According to Bob Lazar, that particular craft was fitted for small beings, basically which we call the grays. In the Travis Walton case, there were two types of beings observed. One was kind of a human type, very similar to the Pleiadians. The other type of being was very similar to the grays, or a variation thereof, which could have been androids or DNA-created humanoids. My question to Mr. Stevens and to Hesseman of what their opinions are, even if they differentiate on that, is what is your opinion on the this discrepancy with what Bob Lazar says, in that the sport model was fitted out with beings of smaller stature, whereas the Variation 2 in the Billy Meier case is fitted out for beings of a taller stature. Thank you.
Well, first of all, the craft are not identical. If you were to bring them up side by side on a computer screen and match them, they won't match. There are a lot of different varieties of craft. In the hundreds, even thousands of cases reported, we have very little exact correspondence of vehicles, indicating something like an almost infinite variety in in special purpose vehicles used. Even within a given group, they use many different varieties of ships. Disc-shaped craft often, but others too. And so it's only a parallel form that is being used. It's a different size. The interior was different. The seats were different. One would have to conclude from that it came from a different society, although it may look like a Pleiadian ship. There may be others in other cases that look similar that would have some differences also. Does that help?
Yeah, basically, except for the fact that they really look alike. Well, would you agree that possibly the Pleiadians do have DNA-created humanoids to do some of their observation of planets?
I wouldn't say that there were DNA-created humanoids, because when Billy went aboard the big mothership for the first time on the 5-day trip, and they left the ship, Semyasi's ship, in the hangar bay in the bottom of the big mother craft. They got up to the control room, and he had forgot his camera in Semyasi's ship. And he turned to her and he said, "Oh my gosh, I left the camera." And she said, "I'll send somebody for it." And she motioned, and a small mechanical being came up to her. She said something to it in their language. The being took off, went down to the hangar bay, a mile or more below where they were, got the camera out of the ship, and came back and headed to Mr. Meier. That was a created being. That was not a biological being, as I understand. It was a mechanical being, and manufactured by the Pleiadians to carry out routine functions.
Okay, well, thank you. Now I'd like Mr. Hesselman's opinion on that.
First of all, I saw Americans ride in Mercedes. Is it true?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think there's the possibility that if there's a contact between different cultures, planetary cultures, that maybe they exchange technology, and maybe the reticulians or wherever they come from, and we do have a mention of reticulians in the Billy Meier contact notes, got the ship type or copied it from the Pleiadians or the other way around. But since the Pleiadians seem to be superior to the reticulians, I believe the reticulians copied it rather from the Pleiadians. I think much more important than this question is the fact that the Bob Lazar story confirms Billy Meier, because Billy Meier photographed, as you say correctly, the same type of craft, even if there are minor differences, 14 years before Bob Lazar saw them. So if Billy Meier theoretically wouldn't tell the truth, we can forget about Bob Lazar and Area 51. Because, as I say, Billy Meier photographed them before, and they are not so frequent that you see them many, many times all over the world. So we have parallel pictures. I showed you some of them, but they are not the most frequent type of craft observed. Therefore, it's important to keep this in mind. And on the other hand, to keep in mind, why is the American intelligence community so much interested to discredit the Billy Meier case? Why do we have the CIA harassment, and Wendell Stevens told me about, why they tried to kill Billy Meier for 15 times, 15 assassination attempts? Why? Maybe because for them it is a very interesting fact that Billy Meier is in contact with the people whose type of ship they have. Maybe when they got in the control of this beam ship type of thing Bob Lazar spoke about, they wanted to find out more about it, and they heard about Billy Meier, and they got very interested in this case much more than in any other contact case, because they wanted to solve the mystery of their own possession. And one thing is sure, Billy Meier has a lot of good contacts all over the world. He has friends in Russia. He has friends in Japan. He doesn't like some Americans too much. So there's the danger that for Billy Meier, this super weapon possession in Area 51, some knowledge about it gets in the hands of other nations. Therefore, it's another reason why this, on one hand, monitoring, on the other hand, debunking and campaign is understandable. If Karl Korff would really be who he claims to be, a senior engineer of Lawrence Livermore Lab, what means one of the leading labs in the military-industrial complex, it would make a sense too in this way, but unfortunately we have more indications that this is wishful thinking. Anyway, they do have a special interest in the Billy Meier case because they are in the possession of the same kind of ship Billy Meier photographed several years before. That's my answer to it.
Corollary, of course, would be also the different types of propulsion system, because according to Bob Lazar, element 115 is used for the sport model, whereas the Pleiadians basically use a totally different form of propulsion system. And I don't know if you'd like to elaborate on that, or if Wendell Stevens has any comment on that, too.
I think it goes too much into details for the remaining 4 minutes we have.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
There's a lot of controversy about whether Billy Meier was once Jesus in a past life. Would you comment on that?
He was not Jesus in a past life.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Very clear answer.
I would like to ask you or anybody on your panel, especially the lady from India, if you ever came across the name Muni and Amasi.
Can you repeat it?
Muni and Amasi.
Here we have the experts on Pali and Sanskrit and Hindi.
No, and you didn't ever hear this
Muni
name.
means seer. And Muni Raji, for example, is the king of the seers, of the prophets, so to say. So Muni is a prophet in Sanskrit.
Muni is a seer?
Yeah, a seer, a prophet, a visionary, a psychic in Sanskrit.
Yeah,
but so, for example, no, I don't know. For example, there's one Indian saint, so to say. His name is Sri Muni Raji, what means the king of the seers, of the visionaries.
Okay.
And but you know, as I say,
Well, there are two different names. One is Muni, and one is Amasi.
Amasi, I don't know. No. Amasi, I know, but not Amasi.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I can say a prayer in Sanskrit. Om Bhora Bhuva Svaha. Beautiful one. No, it's not Sai Baba, it's much older. It's the Gayatri mantra, it's 5,000 years old. Yeah. Tatsavisuraniam Bhardo Devasna Devahi Deyo Yonafa Sodayat Om Shanti. You have to sing in Sanskrit, you can't pronounce it like American English. Om Bhora Bhuva Svaha. Okay.
To me, it's interesting that the two beings that she saw were talking to the grandfather and thanking them for teaching Buddhism and meditation. Is there an accord between the teachings of the Pleiadians and Buddhist teachings?
Definitely, yes.
And what are those common grounds?
I had the great pleasure to be present in one of the nights Phobol spent with Billy. We spent it all together until 4 o'clock in the morning, talking about just everything. And one conclusion we reached in this night was, but from all terrestrial religions, Buddhism is the one which is closest to the Pleiadian teaching. And I'm not talking about Mahayana Buddhism, which has a shamanistic element in it, which comes from the Tibetan Burn religion. But I'm talking about Hinayana, about the original, true, uncontaminated teachings of the Buddha. So this is the reason why they told Billy to get some terrestrial experience at the Ashoka ashram. And as I say, the terrestrial teaching which comes closest to the Pleiadian teaching is pure Hinayana Buddhism.
So like Southeast Asia, Burma, Thailand, Cambodia.
Cambodia.
I'd like to understand that those were the original teachings.
You say it on the mic.
We are talking about the original teaching of the Buddha that comes from the Buddha without
contamination.
Without middle man, so to say.
Yeah, right.
This is what Billy was told when he was on the way to India to go and study the teachings of the Buddha that was remain on earth now the least polluted, so to say. That's what.
Thank you very much.
Keep in mind that, for example, the Mahayana goes more back to Padmasambhava than to the Buddha. Okay.
I have a very simple question. Maybe in here, maybe they may know, but I don't know something. Very simple things. I like you to answer me. Why this human civilization took 6,000 years? Why this time of the history, this phenomena showing up in our planet? And I just wonder, why not 1800? Why not 1900? Why 2000? 2000, our human time invention is this 2,000 years history is human invention, right? So I just wonder how.
I think the more important thing is not the year 2000, but the year 1969. This was when man, for the very first time, put his foot on another celestial body. It's not a planet, the moon, but a celestial body. Man in the 1960s went out to space. It's the beginning of the space age. We joined the cosmic family.
So
we went out, and I think the birth into space is the significant thing and not the year 2000.
Which means we invited them.
We went out where they are.
Yeah. Okay.
If I fly to Japan, for example, I will meet the Japanese. If they invite me or not, but I'm in this atmosphere, so they come and greet me.
Okay. So interpretation is they are greeting us then.
In a way.
Yeah.
And they
Okay.
see that we are in a certain state of development. We are ready, nearly ready to join the cosmic family and to go where they go for billions and billions of years.
Yeah, but UFO sighting was way back to 600 years.
They are
way
here,
back,
they
yes.
are visiting and observing us since the beginning of mankind.
Yes.
But this is the phase where we go into a new era, into a new phase in human evolution, into the cosmic phase in human evolution. And that's the important thing, and where they teach us significant things on a level which was not limited to a certain small group, but can reach all mankind.
Yeah. I'd like to remind us that this is not the first time Earth has been visited by interplanetary visitors. 8,000 years ago, there was a great deal of activity in India, and 2,000 years before that, or 3,000 years before that, in China there were visitors. There was a Chinese emperor that even had ambassadors from the stars in his court, and specifically the Pleiadians, by the way, and those ambassadors from the stars took a nobleman and his wife in outer space to the moon to view the Earth from the moon's position, also to see the moon close up. Those descriptions are very accurate even today.
Okay. Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, time is over. Thank you very much for the attention, for your patience. Thank you very much, especially also to the two ladies here, who for the very, very first time testified in public about their experience in connection with the Meier contact, who flew in, who came in for Phobol. When she met Wendell the very first time, she said, please never name me. Please keep it all for yourself. Of course, it didn't publish her name in the book, but and for her it's a very important step, since she is a prominent political figure and a member, as I say, of the General Assembly of the United Nations, of the Cambodian delegation. So for her, she's risking her reputation.
Yeah, and now even an honorary member for her country.
Absolutely. And so especially it is very brave, because, all the skeptics and debunkers say, people who go into ufology, who appear on conferences like this one, are attention seekers. The opposite is true. It is an absolute career killer to be here. At least you risk a lot, and that's why you have to appreciate a contribution of such a highly respected member of the society of her country. It's Cambodian nobility and diplomacy, and she is a top VIP, and she has the guts to come here and to testify for something so important. So thank you very much. And the same, of course, for Mrs. Sashi and maybe another assembly. Thank you very much. And I can only say now we are entering a very important phase, the reopening of the Billy Meier case, the most discredited, most hated, most debunked case in ufology, and also the most promising one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, panel. It's been an extraordinary evening, everybody. We still have one more wonderful speaker to go. He's going to be on in 30 minutes, so if you have a chance to grab a sandwich or a drink or whatever, bring Brian O'Leary on at 8:45.
Yeah, that's
The oldest known fragment of any manuscript containing the words of the Apostle Mark is known as the Chester Beatty Papyrus. It is a copy of a much earlier work and was written at least 2.5 centuries after Mark lived.
And when he had called the people unto him with his disciples, he said unto them, Whosoever will come after me, let him deny himself, and take up his cross, and follow me. Mark 8:34.
One of the great mysteries of the New Testament was first noticed centuries ago. Large portions of the text in the books of Matthew, Mark, and Luke were almost identical, leading to the assumption that Matthew and Luke may have copied the works of Mark.
But when Jesus saw it, he was much displeased, and said unto them, Suffer little children to come unto me, and forbid them not, for such is the kingdom of heaven. Mark 10:14. But Jesus said, Suffer little children, and forbid them not to come unto me, for of such is the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 19:14. But Jesus called unto him and said, Suffer little children to come unto me, and forbid them not, for of such is the kingdom of heaven. Luke 18:16.
Matthew, Mark, and Luke really share so much in common and read so much alike. Scholars often refer to them as the synoptic gospels. That is, using a term synoptic, meaning to see alike, to refer to them. And that is because they're very closely related literarily. They're dependent upon one another.
When scholars began to notice and convince themselves that Mark was being copied by Matthew and Luke, they could also notice there were some other texts in Matthew and Luke that were in a somewhat similar sequence and with a similar content. They didn't come from Mark, so they postulated another source. The German scholars who did it called it Quelle, which meant the source, simply. I call it the Q Gospel.
No material evidence for the existence of the hypothetical Q Gospel has ever been found, yet its influence is unmistakable. There are obvious similarities within Matthew and Luke, indicating that the writers may well have taken their material from the mysterious Q source.
One can almost imagine Matthew and Luke independently of one another sitting down with a copy of Mark on one hand and a copy of Q on the other hand, or a copy of some other document on the other hand, and just inserting, saying, supplementing Mark with various teachings of Jesus.
The search for the elusive Q document continues, but few believe it will ever be found. If it did exist, who wrote it? Who was the author of the text that may have influenced both Matthew and Luke? The chances are that we shall never know.
You are watching Secrets of the Ancient World.